Yeah, it's that kind of episode. So, it's been a surprising amount of time since this has come up, but Lister is depressed about being possibly the last human alive, doesn't know what to do with his life, and is just kind of tired of everything.
If I want a job, I want to meet people, I want to meet girls, I want to make love.
Well, junior angler's the best you're gonna get out of me, buddy.
Meanwhile, Crichton is developing some old pictures he found, because that's going to make a comeback in the future, apparently. While listening to a cassette tape, no less, when he notices something odd about the pictures. A little later, Rimmer tells the story of someone he used to know.
Fred Holden, he was in our dorm. God, he was thick. Thicky Holden, we used to call him.
Who became a millionaire and married a supermodel after inventing the tension sheet, which is really just a piece of bubble wrap. Afterwards, Crichton shows them the pictures he developed.
Just developed the film as normal, and for some reason they've come to life.
It's the developing fluid. It must have mutated.
That's Frank. It's my brother's wedding.
And yes, Frank is one of the brothers mentioned in Polymorph.
John, Frank, and Howard.
So Lister discovers that he is able to go back to whatever point in time when the picture was taken.
You can touch me, you can touch me.
Squire Hobbit.
I can't even touch me, this is brilliant.
But he can't leave the area that's shown in the picture unless he walks back out.
Smacking. Incredible.
But he can take things out of the picture.
I covered the photograph of one of your magazines.
So, I'm not sure how you can develop a picture from a magazine, but apparently that's what Crichton did.
And it's a complete insult, nutter. Angela's only got one testicle.
Either way, Lister uses it to taunt Hitler.
I think this briefcase.
Because of course he does.
His diary.
Allow me. Things to remember. Stop milk, pay papers, invade Czechoslovakia.
Staff Colonel Count von Staffenberg.
He is the officer who tried to assassinate Hitler by putting a bomb in his briefcase.
And finds out that he can change history that way.
We could go to Dallas in November 1963. Stand on the grassy knoll and shout, "Duck!"
No, but you do something kind of similar in Season 7. So Lister decides to go into an old photograph of himself and give himself the idea of the tension sheet so he can get rich off of it and not end up being stranded on Red Dwarf.
Whoa! Yeah, rock and roll!
Behold, Lister is a teenager, and his band, Smeg and the Heads. Classy, right?
Pub. Ah, yes. A meeting place where people attempt to achieve advanced states of mental incompetence by the repeated consumption of fermented vegetable drinks.
Pretty much, yeah.
Shady! This is totally shady. It's beyond shady, it's surreal. Are these your mates then?
Young Lister's kind of adorable if you can get past the awful, awful hair and clothes.
To try and change our future.
Change it? Aren't you happy being a rock star?
Though being Lister, he's also kind of an idiot and firmly believes that he'll end up being a super rich, famous rock star.
Too old and too crypto-fascist. It's a piece of crypto-fascist bourgeois crap. It's just so crypto-fascist.
I should have done a crypto-fascist counter for this episode.
Make me sound like I was a complete git.
Oh, give up. The guy's an idiot.
It's pretty bad when even Kat thinks you're an idiot.
It'll take a few seconds for the timelines to sort themselves out, and then we'll see if it's worked.
And yet, surprisingly, it worked because Lister disappears, as does Kat and Crichton.
Lister altered the timelines and lived an entirely different life. Consequently, he didn't join Red Dwarf, the cat race never existed, and we never rescued Crichton.
So why does Rimmer still exist as a hologram then? So Holly does some research and digs up info about Lister having invented the tension sheet. Oh god, it's a Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous parody.
Now that's the kind of cash that opens anybody's legs.
At least there's no Robin Leach impression involved. Definitely got my fill of that in the 80s and 90s. But Rimmer is coming to his rescue.
It's my duty. My duty as a complete and utter bastard.
Possibly one of my favorite Rimmer quotes there.
You're looking bad, baby.
Indeed.
You're my main man. Woo!
Wow, Rich Lister is pretty insufferable. Thank God this is an alternate version.
The contractors still haven't devised a way of making it urinate champagne into the courtyard.
Yeah, right, Lister, you wish you had abs like that.
It's me, Rimmer. Rimsey, Arnie Rimmer.
So I guess Rimmer's plan was to confront Lister and somehow make him remember a bunch of stuff that never happened in his timeline.
We were shipmates, Red Dwarf.
Way to go.
Of course you don't remember. It hasn't happened, has it?
Duh.
Who is the rich man? You, with your 58 houses, your private island in the Bahamas? Or me, with what I've got? It's you, isn't it?
Should have thought a bit harder about that speech, really.
You should have thought a bit harder about your whole plan. So, new plan that makes a whole lot more sense, mostly. By the way, Scudder. Rimmer is going back in time to when he was at camp to tell himself about the tension sheet so he could become rich before Lister and set everything almost right. Not sure what he was doing with a picture of a bunch of boys asleep in beds, not to mention who took that picture, but oh well. Rule of funny, I guess. This is one of those episodes where if you think about it even a little, it falls apart. His nickname was Bonehead. I think there was a reference to that in Crichton.
Or what about the nickname I had at school?
What, Bonehead?
Not sure what's up with the boxing gloves, but anyway, Rimmer tells himself the idea about the tension sheet.
They're little sheets of paper with lots of air bubbles in them.
Like you're getting packing paper.
Look, do you mind, Holden? This is a private conversation.
But the kid in the next bed hears the entire thing. And he is the one Rimmer was talking about earlier who originally invented the tension sheet, so another plan that I can't believe Rimmer thought was going to work.
Oh yes, oh yes, oh yes, if I were a rich man. Dubba, 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 dubba.
Yeah, so Lister, Crichton, and Cat return, and I'm going to go ahead and point out a detail that leads into an amusing gag. You'll notice that the H on Rimmer's forehead is gone.
Any moment.
So of course it turns out that Rimmer inadvertently set everything right again.
Why does nothing ever go right for me?
But there was one change.
Don't ask me why, but somehow you're no longer a hologram.
I'm alive!
You'd think he would have noticed that sooner.
Brighton! Unpack Rachel and get out the puncture repair kit!
And that's the second reference to Rimmer's blow-up doll.
It's inflatable Ingrid, your polythene pal.
Different name though. Could be that Lister was just calling it by a nickname before. But yeah, you can guess how long this is gonna last.
I am alive!
And now the status quo has been completely restored.
What was he saying?
So ends Timeslides. So this episode is technically extremely flawed, but it's still a lot of fun, even if you kind of have to shut your brain off. Like I joked about earlier, with a lot of these photos it just doesn't make sense to have them on hand, and I don't know how you can develop a picture cut out of a magazine. But oh well. This episode heavily runs on rule of funny, and I think the ridiculousness of all this just adds to the comedy. I mean, hell, it all starts off with developing fluid mutating. Let's not pretend that realism was the goal here. But one thing that kind of does bother me if I think about it is Lister's actions. I get that he's depressed and maybe not making the best judgments at the moment, but how does he not even consider the fact that his not having ever gotten on Red Dwarf means that Cat and his race were wiped out of existence? Compare that to Waiting for God, where Lister learns about the origins of the cat people and what all that entails, and it weighs so heavily on him. After all the hardships suffered by the cat people, I could maybe believe that he thinks it'd be better if he never brought Frankenstein on board in the first place, but it's never touched on. What's possibly even more horrifying is that Crichton is still stuck on the Nova 5, presumably still doing his Norman Bates routine. No one questions any of this. I can believe that Cat wouldn't think of it, but you'd think that Crichton would say something about it. At the end of the day, he wouldn't try to stop Lister, but you'd think that he'd at least say something about it. The only thing anyone says is Rimmer pointing out the immorality of Lister stealing the tension sheet idea, and that's probably only because he doesn't want to see Lister get rich off of it. So yeah, another episode that kind of forgets that Lister is supposed to be a good guy. But other than that, it's a good one. Next up is actually the last episode of Season 3, appropriately called The Last Day. See you then.
And he died tragically in a plane crash, aged 98. He was making love to his 14th wife and lost control of the plane.
Have you got any photographs?
Well, not of that, no.